Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mixtape Podcast. I am Fatma Arif, and today my guest is Sabdezar Irfan, who is a visual communication designer by profession. She works in the corporate sector as her day job, and she also works as a freelance illustrator. But most importantly, she is a storyteller. And today we're going to talk about her interest in storytelling and the different and innovative ways, mediums that she is using to tell the stories that she cares about. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So just let's um, dig in with your the work that you have put out in the world, which is your debut graphic novel, Gray Matter. So, just I know we have discussed this separately as well, but just for our audience, uh, just share a brief of how this came about. This was technically supposed to be your thesis project, but just share how it turned it from a thesis project to a publicly published book.
Okay, so before I even had an idea that I was going to end up making a graphic novel, I knew my theme that I wanted to work on. So it halfway through my thesis, when I decided that I was going to take this um pathway and I was going to make a graphic novel, I decided that I was going to take it beyond just this project. And inshallah, once I was done with it, I would try to like get it published. So from the point when it was done and I had my grades and all of that, I started looking for people who were interested in publishing it. And that was quite a difficult process, to be honest, because either I didn't know who to go to, and even when I did get a few leads, they would not understand what graphic novel means and what my story would even, um, contribute to society or to the readership of today. So, I mean, I guess it was just an idea कि ये करना है, but I didn't really know the things I would have to do to get it out. And that sort of just came along the way.
Yeah, so as you mentioned the fact that you when you were trying to get it published, you didn't. One of the hurdles that you faced was the fact that the publishers didn't really understand that if this would be something that they would be able to sell. So उसमें वही एक चीज
Exactly.
है that when we say graphic novels, I think I don't know, I can't surely say for the rest of the world because I think वहाँ पे storytelling के diverse mediums are still they still have more breathing space. But यहाँ पे whenever you somebody mentions graphic novel या anything related to graphic animation, तो हमारा सबसे पहला जो जाता है आइडिया ऑफ व्हाट दैट प्रोडक्ट और स्टोरी इज गोना बी वो है सुपर हीरोज कि इट विल बी एनीथिंग और एवरीथिंग टू डू विद सुपर हीरोज या माइथोलॉजी होगी उसमें. um you took that medium and you told a story that revolves around mental health. So how did you
Yeah.
decide or what inspired you ke this is something that you were going to do, especially in the local market?
So for me, it wasn't really a very calculated decision to go for a story that was not conventional or, to do something that was going to be outside of the status quo. It was just that because I knew my concept before I knew what I was going to do with that concept, this story came to me before the idea of turning it into a graphic novel did. So I knew that I was going to work on codependency and certain issues that I grew up either seeing in people around me or experiencing myself. And as a child of divorce, um I just what would I say? I took in a lot of the emotions, the negative emotions in my household, and I internalized them to the point where a lot of, let's say, my mom's issues also became my issues. And I just felt like we need to talk about some of those things because बहुत सारी बातें हैं जो हो रही होती हैं, but there's a lot of stuff that people don't end up talking about. So I knew that I will talk about it. and it didn't really matter to me whether it was going to sell or not, even though a lot of people did give me that feedback. Even in my thesis jury, I was told, kg, did you really think about the fact that this story might be hard to sell, or that just a graphic novel, like a piece of paper, would be hard to sell in this highly evolved digital world? And I mean, if I'm being honest, no, I didn't really care about any of that, because I just knew that I wanted to tell the story, and if other people were open to reading it and to having a discussion about it, then great. But if not, then I would still have done my part.
Mhm. So, well, we will get into those semantics of, the Pakistani publishing market, and how the situation is different from how books are marketed in the rest of the world. But let's first
Yeah,
thora dig into, the theme that you picked. And I just mentioned that, it's broadly, we can say it touches upon the subject of mental health. But as you also sort of gave a hint on what the story revolves around, you took not just mental health, I would say, but which is in itself a very taboo topic still in the country, but you also took the issue of divorce. वो उस पे भी
yeah,
इतनी बात नहीं की जाती, एंड द नॉवल डजंट जस्ट रियली वो एक टिपिकल डाइवोर्स की स्टोरी जो वी अनफॉर्चुनेटली गेट टू सी ऑन आवर मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया पे देखते हैं कि जी जबरदस्ती शादी थी तो नहीं चली, वो फलाना हो गया तो नहीं चली, वन पार्टी वाज एक्सट्रीमली रॉन्ग तो इसलिए नहीं चली. uh, y-
yeah,
Not giving away a lot of the story. And I think the sort of, for a graphic novel, even if we discuss the details of the story, people will still get to absorb a lot of other things when they read the book for themselves. But you open with two people who wanting to have build a life together, but then the story
yeah,
revolves around, but that it doesn't pan out, and the story doesn't show that
yeah,
one person is extremely wrong and the other person is the innocent party. So just maybe elaborate on that aspect. Was it a personal experience? Yeah, obviously हम अपने इर्द गिर्द भी देखते हैं, we have friends and everybody, whoever has, especially I think now the, जब लोग अब थोड़ी थोड़ी बात करना शुरू किए लोगों ने डिवोर्स के बारे में, they say कि it's not always because the other person is matlab is really really a bad person, but it's just something's not
yeah,
working. So what's your
yeah.
take on that?
I feel like when we talk about divorce, we either want to hear, because we sort of want to justify to ourselves that हाँ ये होना चाहिए था, ये शादी खत्म होनी चाहिए थी, so कोई solid reason होना चाहिए. So we're either looking for, oh, did one of them cheat? Was one of them like a psychopath? And we're looking for like these two three big social wrongs that we believe कि अगर ये exist करते हैं तो हाँ फिर ये relationship खत्म हो जाना चाहिए. But there's so much more that goes into the breaking of a relationship, like as it does with making a relationship. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of times, like how we're not ready to accept that sometimes relationships just don't work out because people are different. That is a mindset that is not only inculcated in people who are like responding to that, but also people who are involved in that, because a lot of times you see people who are miserable in their marriages, and not because their husbands or wives are cheating, or because they are like horrible villains from some you know um sometimes they're just miserable, they're just not happy, it's just not working, and because they cannot identify that one really wrong thing, they stay in those unhappy marriages. And for my characters especially, it was not about one of them being unfaithful. Like you see at one point, where the wife is wondering, like she comes up with these two three main questions for her husband, because in her head, if she asks those questions and if he says yes to one of them, then perhaps it'll justify why he doesn't want to be with her anymore. But she's unable to wrap her head around the fact that it's just not working for him. And I mean, I feel like, at least what I've seen of life so far, 8 out of 10 times, that's why relationships don't work out. That's why friendships even sometimes don't work out. Um, Nobody has to be a murderer or a cheater or like a thief for a relationship to fail. It's just sometimes about differences because um, I mean, isn't that what life is about? Like you being an individual, no two people being the same, but somehow finding a compromise. And then yeah, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it just doesn't happen that way,
Yeah,
and that doesn't make the party bad. They're just not right for each other.
yeah, I think we, as you said, कि हमारी society में अभी भी ये वाला concept कि two people just don't work out and that is why a marriage breaks out is something that's still unconceivable. Because वही questions यही होते हैं ना, वो तीन चार सवाल पूछे जाते हैं कि was this the issue, was this the issue, was this the issue, and when somebody says कि नहीं इनमें से कुछ भी नहीं था and then they were like तो हाँ है तो फिर गुजारा कर लेना था.
Exactly.
So वो
Exactly.
जो चीज़ है ना कि बस गुजारा कर लेना था because and you know.
Sometimes it's not the fact that somebody does not want to do guzara for their entire lives. They just want more, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think wo that's wanting more sort of for a lot of times because I think as more and more people I think from our generations या आगे से या हमसे भी थोड़ी सी एक जो previous generation है जहाँ पे quote and quote डिवोर्स के रेट्स ज़्यादा नज़र आ रहे हैं लोगों को. आई थिंक पीपल आर लाइक के बर्दाश्त नहीं है. बट आई थिंक इट्स अ लॉट मोर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड जस्ट दैन सेइंग के बर्दाश्त नहीं है. आई थिंक नोबडी गोज इनटू अ मैरिज विद दिस कॉन्सेप्ट कि ये ख़त्म कर देंगे अगर इतनी छोटी सी चीज़ ना हुई या ना
Exactly.
हुई.
Nobody goes to like a marriage also thinking ke, you know, अब मुझे बर्दाश्त करना पड़ेगा. Like बर्दाश्त का क्या मतलब है? Compromise is another thing, and
Yeah,
that is inevitable. You have to compromise even in a friendship. But to say कि बर्दाश्त करो, like ये, why does it have to be a punishment that I have to endure? And people can't wrap their heads around the idea that some people don't want to be in relationships that feel like punishments.
exactly. I think it's a way it's a generational thing. But again, another aspect of this conversation and this even the taboo subject and also something that you cover in your graphic novel as well is the fact that in marriages it's not just two people. फिर जो अगर बच्चे होते हैं तो they are individuals as well who see what's happening in their environment and they absorb it and it has an impact on them as well. उनकी भी mental health जो है वो in this सारे equation में involve होती है. And many a times I think people are so concerned about the two adults or two people who are apparently the two key parties in this scenario के वो वाला aspect नहीं देखा जाता. In even in conditions
Yeah,
where people do make the compromise and think कि जी हाँ जी compromise कर लिया, but if it creates a toxic environment तो वो क्या कर रहा होता है to the kids and for their well-being. I think that is also something that's not catered to.
exactly. Yeah,
So again, you took on a very serious subject through the medium of graphic novels, and anybody who's listening who thinks कि अच्छा हमें story पता चल गई तो लेने की क्या जरूरत है. With a graphic novel, it's always the imagery that gives not just the main story, but उसका एक subtext होता है. It's just like a painting कि everybody takes something different um, from
yeah,
that image और उनके लिए it has a different meaning. So likewise in this graphic novel also I feel that the imagery that you have used and a lot of it is grayscale, but still
yeah,
every imagery is very powerful and उसमें कुछ there obviously when you see something एक तो broader picture जो आपको first uh, viewing पे नजर आती है and if you just look at the pages closely there are going to be small things that people can obviously infer their own stories from them. So just share थोड़ा सा अपना कह लो कि artistic process that went into it. um, how did you choose the scales, how did you choose the imagery, वो सारा कुछ.
So when it comes to like choosing the layout in terms of, let's say, texture or color, I knew that because the concept that I was playing with was a really complex one, and because the story that I was trying to tell had a lot of nuanced, elements in it. There are scenes in there that if you read on their own, they might not make sense, but when you're reading it, keeping everything else that's happening in the book in mind, you're like, oh, like I can relate this to that scene, and now this scene makes more sense because of this other scene. I just thought that because ye sab kuch itna convoluted hai and there is so much happening, I wanted I just wanted to keep some part of this story a little less complicated, to put it simply. I just wanted to not have a ton of color in there, to be very straightforward with my story, and I do not want for people to get lost in the colors or, like the embellishments. I just want them to really, really feel the story, to really feel the words, the conversation, and all of the spaces where there are no words, because for those emotions and for those moments sometimes there are no words. So I wanted for my images to tell their story without needing the help of bright colors or something of that sort. And the reason why I chose to put that red color in there is because if you just study like color psychology, red has a very strong symbolic meaning. Also because, as I mentioned before, a lot of these scenes, a lot of conversations, a lot of elements that are in this book are taken from my own life experiences. um, Another like key reason for me to choose that specific shade of red was because of th- this artifact that I own from my childhood that is of that color, and it has a very specific meaning for me, which I don't want to go into, but it's related to what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really wanted for me to be able to work that into the story, because at some point I also did think that if I don't get the story out to other people, I want that 10 years from today or 20 years from today, when I look back at this is like my journal, you know. Pera is so many women that I have known. She is me, she is my mother, she is, my friends, she is so many people. And all of the emotions and the words and the expressions that I have put into her life are from my own life, and I don't want to forget that. So gray matter will also serve as just like a memoir for me. It's like a look back at my own perception of life. So I wanted to keep that very clear and as uncomplicated and you know embellished as possible, because the story is important, the dialogue it can generate is important, the colors are not.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, if like funnily enough, because I'm talking about the gray space between black and white, and you know it just somehow worked out in a way कि एक और layer of meaning add हो गया to me not putting color into there. I'm literally talking about a gray space in gray. So I think that just ended up working out in my favor too.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you to sort of elaborate on how you ended up deciding on the name, but you covered that here. So just as
A little extra though. Other than the gray space wali cheese, it's also because I was talking about a psychological um, issue, something that is deeply rooted in a person's psyche. I wanted to also somehow draw some sort of reference from the brain or the way the mind works. And gray matter, if you remember eighth grade ki
yeah,
anatomy, is also a part of your brain. So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So just थोड़ा सा talk about the images and because there are characters and they have like प्रॉपर उसकी स्केचिंग है कैरेक्टर्स की. बट in addition to the a husband and a wife and the kids के characters, there is like settings हैं इसमें. मतलब for anyone who's ever seen a graphic novel, yeah, ever seen anything related to animation, they know कि character से पीछे पूरा background वगैरह होता है. And इसमें भी, despite everything being in mostly in grayscale, and then that touch of red that you mentioned, जो बैकग्राउंड की इमेजरी है, वाज इट लाइक योर ओन, लाइक जिस तरह कोई आर्टिस्ट स्केचिंग करता है, वर दे इंस्पायर्ड फ्रॉम सम प्लेसेस, या हाउ डिड यू वेंट अबाउट एंड सॉर्ट ऑफ ड्रू दोस, लाइक सारी इमेजरी वगैरह जो है, उसकी डिटेलिंग जो है.
Okay, so मुझे ये पता था from the beginning that if you have noticed, I do not show any spaces extensively other than Farah's house, because like the only times you see her outside of the house are the very opening scene with her husband, and then towards the end when the story sort of comes full circle for her. And stepping out of that house sort of becomes symbolic of a kind of freedom for her. So I wanted that because the major part of my story is going to be set inside a house, and because that house is not only going to be representative of her feeling of being stuck, but also of all of the detail and attention and love that she puts into her home and into her family, which जिससे आपको फिर ये भी अंदाजा होता है कि इस फैमिली का टूटना उसके लिए कितना बड़ा devastation है. Because even in every little decoration in the house you can see that there is, it's not just a standard place. It's somewhere where you can really see effort has been put in. So yeah, inspiration was definitely drawn from this place, that I know, this person's house that I used to spend a lot of time at. Um, and it just really, when I came up with Farah's character, I just knew that if Farah was alive, if she was a person standing in front of me, this is the house she would live in. So luckily, because I had spent a lot of time in that, and because that house belonged to my friend's mom, I got to go there, and I had already written the script at this point, so I knew कि किस पॉइंट पे कौन सा कैरेक्टर किधर होगा और कौन से एंगल्स होंगे. So I placed myself in all of those positions, and then I took reference photographs. A lot of detail I obviously added and subtracted while I was drawing it, but I feel like I just got really lucky with the kind of setting that I wanted to place my characters in, and the fact that I had actually really been in that place. So I feel like if I had not known of that house or spent actual like time in there, um, I mean, for all I can say, the story could have potentially fallen apart, because you might not realize it, but the house plays a very, very important role in their lives and in how the story kind of comes together. So I just got really lucky that I had the reference in front of me my entire life, and I just got to use it.
Okay, so that's I think more than enough details that we would like to give our listeners about gray matter, because for rest of the details I would really like for them to experience it on their own. So let's just talk about the publishing scene. We just पे हम थोड़ी से you touched upon, and we said कि we will definitely get back to it, and I think it's really important because Pakistan ka publishing scene unfortunately has always seen ups and downs. um, and as far as we are concerned, I think हमारे होश में वो downgrade ही होता गया है. But now
Yeah.
we see a few small publishers coming out platforms के साथ in an attempt to sort of boost the local storytelling. मतलब because एक दो बड़े publishers हैं, and as you mentioned, even your professors were saying कि इसका मतलब sellable material ये है या नहीं है. So I think
Hmm.
when there are few big publishers, this is because they treat it as a hardcore business alone, and उसमें I think creativity थोड़ी सी मारी जाती है. तो just elaborate on your experience and also share how you ended up with Zuka Books.
So I had this preconceived thing in my head, because people had constantly been, they were discouraging me. They were just trying to warn me that it's going to be hard and you might end up not being able to really get your story out there. So I had this thing in mind कि बहुत मुश्किल होगा, मुझे कोई नहीं मिलेगा, nobody is going to be interested. So I wasn't as disappointed as I possibly could have been अगर मुझे ये idea ना होता. But there was a lot of, I can't even call it rejection because people just simply do not respond if they're not interested. That is just a thing Pakistanis do for some reason. I don't know why. But I would send the draft and people would just ignore it or say, oh, we'll get back to you, and then just disappear. So I started, somebody suggested कि भाई बाहर भेजना शुरू कर दो. So I started looking at different magazines abroad. वो भी, by the way, predominantly were all about superhero comics, and very strict, like 24-page layout हो और ये हो और वो हो. तो because मैंने तो ऐसी कोई कन्वेंशन फॉलो भी नहीं की थी, तो आई वाज क्वाइट श्योर कि उनमें से किसी जगह तो कोई सीन वैसे भी नहीं होगा. तो आई जस्ट kept like sending it everywhere I could and hoping कि please कोई plagiarize ना कर ले, और please like एटलीस्ट बस बच जाए मेरी स्टोरी अगर नहीं भी बाहर पब्लिश हो सकती तो. um, so it was pretty much like अगर आपने blindfold लगाया when you're just like roaming around and touching and feeling everything to try and find your way. It was sort of like that. And then because Shazil was an alumni from my university, I thought I should just reach out to her. So I wrote an email and I was quite sure, I was like 80% sure कि जवाब इधर से भी नहीं आएगा, but चलो might as well give it a shot. So I wrote to her. I sent her my graphic novel and I said, if you have someone who can help me publish it, so let me know. And I think a week or two later, she actually sent me Meher's information. And even then, like at that point, I had sent it to three, four people, and two of those places had said, oh, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. And I was sort of waiting, sort of not really caring because umeed nahi thi. And then Meher called me up one day. That was also a couple of weeks after I sent my things to her. And then we had this conversation on the phone, and I was like, okay, this, like from the get go, from that very first conversation, I knew that no matter what, this person is not looking at my book as you know a product to sell, but she's actually interested in the story and interested in the why of it, and in she just believed in my vision, and that's what just like kind of, it's not like मेरे पास कोई बहुत ज़्यादा और options भी थी तो मैं वो boast नहीं करी, मगर I just knew then कि if I'm going to go through with this is the person. So I was like, okay, ठीक है, I'm gonna stop trying, I'm gonna stop sending it to other people, and I'm gonna call it off with the other people who had left me hanging. um, and it just and then from there on, COVID ki wajah se there was a lot of like delay, and at some points I thought, okay, Meher has forgotten about it and she probably doesn't care anymore. But she's been there throughout. She has cared about it. She has cared about every little detail, like ये वाले कलर में प्रिंट कर लें तो क्या होगा, इस क्वालिटी में करें तो क्या होगा. She's just cared about every little thing like it's her own book. And that has been the greatest blessing for me, because I didn't have to fight with her at any point. Okay, oh, I don't want this way, I want it the other way. And she is just, you know I really felt like more than being a publisher, she became a friend to me and to Farah. And she was one of the people who were really like, I've been there, I relate to this story. I understand the story. I have seen it in my own life, or, in this world. And that was the aim all along, I guess. So just finding her, even if I don't end up selling like 100,000 copies, it's going to be enough, because I got that one person to really, really care about it. So that's
That,
how my experience with Mary has been.
that's I think pretty sweet and interesting, and also I think a bit hopeful that we still have people who are actually interested in telling, diverse stories and empathizing with diverse stories. बिकॉज वही वाली चीज़ है कि हम आजकल स्पेसिफिकली अगर हम अपने लोकल एंटरटेनमेंट सेगमेंट में देखें, आई थिंक बी इट, आई वोंट, कुछ बुक्स भी इसमें शामिल हैं फिक्शन की, फिल्म हो गई, टेलीविजन हो गई, मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टोरीज दैट आर गोइंग आउट फ्रॉम आवर पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, आई थिंक वो एक टिपिकल टाइप का स्टोरीज, एंड आई थिंक it's time that we start at some level to sort of break out of those and share all the other aspects of our lives and things that actually go about um, in our lives.
And
And
even if we talk about divorce or any of these issues, we always demonize one party, and that's, I think,
yeah.
the biggest difference between the kind of narrative I've seen around and the kind of narrative that I tried to build. And I really hope that resonates with the readers as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to. I have a friend who has his own podcast as well, and uh, this was a subject that was discussed on there with, and we had like a few other common friends who who for whom this is part of their life experience, and this is what I picked from them because this is, both of them shared this specific aspect of it and sort of reinforced it कि भाई जरूरी नहीं कि अगला बंदा जो है ना वो उसको वो डीमन है तो ही नहीं चली. It's just that
Yeah,
there are times where it doesn't work, so you don't have to like say कि नहीं कोई बंदा ही सही, मतलब that other person was demon or was not the right person, did XYZ things. It's just कि
yeah,
it was never meant to be, and let nobody
yeah.
actually wanted to just get out of it right at the get go. Everybody tried but it didn't work out. So yeah, the story is definitely relatable. I hope that more and more people get to read it. But just one aspect of it were you sort of, I think one of your you mentioned कि आपके thesis के jury में या आपके advisor ने said कि in this realm of digital uh, medium, do you think that this story will sell in a print form? So my question to you is कि as a graphic designer by profession and somebody who plays with different mediums, don't you think, and somebody who loves books, I'm not saying कि किताब क्यों है digital क्यों नहीं है, I always
Mhm.
would, even if you ask me, मतलब even though I own a Kindle, I at times read ebooks, but I'll always, if you ask me, will prefer a hard copy. But do you think that this story, I'm not just saying that this should be converted, but stories like these, जिस तरह बाहर भी होता है कि graphic novel आता है उसकी film भी होती है, उसका मतलब वेब सीरीज टाइप वर्जन होता है, तो डू यू थिंक दैट you could have, or in future if you like tell more stories, you would be interested to explore कि एक स्टोरी के डिफरेंट वर्जन्स हों, कि उसका विजुअल वर्जन भी हो, so that maximum audience can be reached?
Um, I think that if I try to sort of detach myself from the story and try to look at it from a commercial perspective, then I would say yes to all of those questions, and I would try to monetize this entire thing. But maybe this is not even, like a good thing that I feel this way about it. But um, if I'm being honest, how I truly feel is that this story is too close to me for me to try and commercialize it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, whether or not it sells, I don't really care, because at least this time, in the future, maybe I'll have a different objective. But this time, the objective was not to end up making money off of this.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So I was
yeah.
not just referring to with gray matter. I was just
Mm.
like sort of broadening the scope of our conversation and just adding to the fact that
Oh,
because you
okay.
are a graphic designer, and hopefully we will see more
Mm.
stories from you. I know you have a day job, but this is something, storytelling is something that you are passionate about. So obviously we will definitely see, inshallah, more stories from you. but वही के exploring, because with all those diverse mediums that we have, and the fact that while digital has its drawbacks and it's a whole different debate and conversation, but to get um, our stories from our part of the world and exposing an international audience to them, with all the expenses and वो सारा factors को mind में रखते हुए, I feel कि digital is a form which is the easiest. मतलब अगर कोई animation web series है YouTube पे, we can always share it with our friends from other countries and share it on social media कि जी, you know, this is something that you should have a look at. Yeah, any of this sort of aspect. So what's
Yeah.
your, I was just asking what's your take on that in general, not just for gray matter.
So in general, I do feel that those things have really helped people around the world to read and talk and find out about things that they could not otherwise have had access to. Like I remember there used to be a time when I would wait for someone in my family to go abroad क्योंकि हर तरह की किताब यहाँ नहीं मिलती थी या हर तरह
Yeah.
की you know that kind of thing. And I would wait कि कोई जाए और वो मेरे लिए लेके आए. और अब I don't really have to do that because I'll just download an EPUB and that'll be good. But I feel like all of those things are super important in terms of increasing reach and opportunity because let's face it, regardless of how we're developing or whatever, we're quite far behind a lot of the other parts of the world, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
But that does not have to mean that we don't get exposure to what we truly want to be exposed to. And like if media helps facilitate that, then by all means, I think it's great. But if I'm talking about me as a creator or an artist in specific, like despite knowing all of this, I honestly don't see myself working that much in digital media because मैं डी हूँ और मैं वही करती हूँ जो मुझे अच्छा फील होता है और मुझे यही अच्छा फील होता है because I mean it sort of speaks for itself. जब Kindles आए थे और वो there were so many I don't even know their names anymore. um, People actually used to worry कि अब books extinct हो जाएंगी, actual
Yeah.
किताबें नहीं होंगी.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen because people
Yeah.
who really want to pick up a book and smell the paper, they're going to do that.
Yeah.
So I
I,
mean,
I think
I
it's all
feel like
part of the
because I'm
experience. Reading experience, it's
yeah,
part of that.
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like because I'm the person who will, save up to go splurge and buy like 5,000 की दो किताबें
Exactly.
मेरे जैसे और भी पागल इस दुनिया में हैं जो
Yeah,
करेंगे
right. You're
और
talking to one of them.
yes exactly so we exist and we will continue to do what we're doing and because I'm DEET I will only work for those few pagal log.
Yeah, I think वही वाली बात है वो when वो a friend asked me recently, she's coming to Pakistan, she's like कुछ लेके आना है, she gave me some options and I was like I ये तो मुझे यहाँ चीजें मिल जाएंगी किसी तरह, ये दो तीन किताबें हैं, ये ले आओ.
Yeah,
And it was like okay fine, मतलब people know कि अगर कुछ देना है तो the it's better to ask me कि कौन सी कोई किताब चाहिए बाहर से वो ले आए. So I was like yeah,
yeah,
that's a better option.
yeah,
um so before we wrap up, and because we are talking about books and talking about being total nerds, uh, you have not just done the graphics, you have done the dialogues in the novel as well. So
yep,
you are like you have an educational background in graphic designing. So ये writing का शौक कहाँ कब पैदा हुआ, कहाँ से पैदा हुआ? Obviously you read, so obviously I'm pretty sure that's part of it. But did you take any like semi-professional training in it, कोई workshops वगैरह to sort of hone your skills, or was it something that uh, you felt like doing it?
When you asked that question, like while you were even talking, I was just thinking of 500 ways I could answer this question. But I think if like I've been writing and drawing since I was like tiny. Like
Mhm,
one of my earliest, like one of the stories that my parents tell me from my young days, like I used to sit and I used to like write stories and I used to draw on CDs ke dabbe. And as much as it's been like a dual passion for me, it's also been really difficult for me because I'm always torn between my love for writing and my love for art.
mhm,
Um, so it's just I used to be that kid जो हर दिन fiction लिखता होता था, and I used to actually like believe that people who don't go home from school and spend 3 hours writing stories are nuts and they're missing out on life. And I genuinely used to believe that it's not possible to not do that. And I remember I used to write these stories and I used to print them out and bring them to school, और फिर वो पूरी class में circulate होती थी and all of my friends would read them and fan my ego and be like wow you're amazing ये वो. तो ये तो मेरे अंदर एक बस एक हमेशा से था कि bro तुम writer हो, you know. So like I didn't even think that I should have someone else on board, I should ask someone else to write the story. But I just thought ki, yeah, I can do it best, and not just because I was very confident in my skill, but I'm not boasting. That's a joke. Um, it was also because I felt like the story will be most authentic if it's coming from a person who is really living every moment of it. And because all of it was so personal to me, there was honestly no other way this could have been done. Like I had to be the one to write it. So
mhm.
there were no two ways about it, no second thought even. Um, I just knew कि I'm gonna write it, and I hadn't written in a while because I got caught up in university और फिर obviously वो हर दिन लिखने वाला मजाक भी खत्म हो गया स्कूल के बाद. But I knew that I had to figure it out, and the story had to be told in my own words. So I did it.
Yeah, I think, and I think you made the right choice in doing that, because the art and the dialogues that are used, they sort of, they do complement each other.
Yeah,
So
felt like I was able to do visual justice to words that
yeah,
I wasn't feeling. So I
yeah,
really had to put myself in that position to be able to really draw it even.
yeah, yeah. So like a typical question to for any author, are you working on something else? Is something else on the pipeline? What?
I'm always working on something else. I've
So
been working on something for months, and because it's a very different story from Grey Matter, every now and then I decide that it's absolute crap and doesn't deserve my time and attention, and I give up on it. But very recently, I have picked it up again, and this time I hope I will complete.
you know, obviously, gray matter. You have put gray matter out in the world. I think it's time to uh, don't give up on whatever the next story that you're working on, even if it's different. And it's, I think it will be a good addition to see a different sort of story coming out of you. Why not? Um, do you
Yeah.
before signing off, do you want to plug in any of your social media accounts? Where can people, if they want to follow your work or want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Okay, so if people wanna, okay, so I can give you my art Instagram.
Yeah.
It's Sabzar, SABZA and then you can find me on Twitter, but I would not recommend that because I just rant about random things a lot. So it might be very irrelevant and boring. But if you want to, it's Sabdezor, Sabdeezor. But yeah, if you wanna, I mean, yeah, my art Instagram is I'm always using it. So if you
Yeah.
ever anybody ever
Yeah.
wants to reach out to me, that would be the fastest way.
Sure. And I'm gonna try and sort of add some visuals of the book in this final version of the podcast, and hopefully we'll have you back when your next book or your next story is out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.